From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wildcast podcast. Justin Spears here with Michael Lev and sports editor of the Star, Ryan Finley. Hello, guys. Week 3 of this podcast. How's everybody doing?
Good. I wish I was better at picking games.
Don't we all?
What? You wish you were better?
Don't we all?
You're better than me. Everyone's better than me.
Remember last week when I yelled and screamed about ASU covering against Oklahoma State? Anyway, called Oklahoma State mediocre. I'll take that back now.
That was the only game that I got right. But anyway, moving on.
It's kind of a backdoor cover for Oklahoma State. All right, well, we got a chock full of games to pick out later on in the podcast, including Arizona versus North Dakota State. Once again, we're also going to do over-unders that I've picked out for this game on Saturday. So it's going to be another fun podcast. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the Wildcast podcast. Can't emphasize that enough. We appreciate it if you would leave us a comment and a 5-star rating. That helps us out on Apple and Spotify. And also, be sure to download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play. All right, guys. So Arizona suffered their first loss of the season, falling to Mississippi State. Kind of not a shocker. But even though the Arizona lost by 22 points, 39-17, it was a very competitive game for the most part. And I think the fact that they went toe-to-toe with a very good and experienced SEC team shows that this team has really come a long way in the last year.
Yeah, Arizona was down 15 with the ball and driving late third, early fourth quarter. Then there was that tip interception off of Jayden DeLaura, and sort of the game got away from them.
They were down 8.
Oh, down 8. That's right.
At that point,
What did I say? I said
no, 15. No, they were down 8.
They were down
and
8
had the ball.
And had the ball. I don't know about you guys, but just sort of my 10,000-foot view on this is, if week 1 showed how much better this offense can be when the quarterback's making all the right decisions, I think week 2 showed that the only way this team's going to go forward is if the quarterback makes more good decisions.
Yeah.
We saw, I think, some reckless play. I think some bad decision making and kind of some hero ball out of Jayden DeLaura against Mississippi State. And, he just did not stay within the confines of the offense. And I'm sure that has to drive Chad Fish crazy. I was also struck by Mississippi State's size. This is not a team that I think any of us would compare to Alabama.
Yeah.
But for sort of a middle-of-the-pack SEC team, they have big players and guys who look like they would fit in, at USC, Oregon, Washington, some of the big boys of the Pac-12. So those were my 2 takeaways, is that the quarterback needs to make better decisions, and there's a huge size difference between the SEC and the Pac-12.
There's a couple times where I felt like I was watching Madden. Like the way Jayden DeLaura was playing quarterback and scrambling and trying to, like you said, play hero ball. Yeah. It was like, man, this is how I play video games.
Yeah.
This is how I play NCAA Madden.
Yeah.
But Lev, in your 5 takeaways, after watching the film, you weren't ready to just say, okay, all the interceptions, all the problems for Arizona on offense wasn't all on Jayden DeLaura. The biggest question mark going into the season was the offensive line. And I've said this kind of all week. It's like to quote the late, great Dennis Green, it's like they are who we thought they were. And that is the biggest concern for Arizona moving forward. There were a lot of times where Jayden had to run and kind of get out, and because he was being chased by Mississippi State defenders. So it wasn't all Jayden DeLaura's fault. And on top of that, receivers were also dropping balls. So it was just a bad night altogether for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I don't think it was all on him. But as Ryan said, he also needs to make better decisions in those situations. And I felt like in the San Diego State game, the pressure was similar, and he made all the right moves, all the right calls, dumped the ball to his outlet receivers. Maybe Mississippi State took that away a little bit, and he didn't have those options. But I feel like, hey, worst case scenario, if you're dumping the ball off to Michael Wiley, that's going to be a good play because he's playing exceptionally well, playing the best ball of his career by far. And hey, if you can turn some of those plays where it's an interception or it's a sack into a 3 or 4 yard gain, then you can stay quote unquote ahead of the chains or quote unquote on schedule. In my cat stats this week, which is available for subscribers only this time, I wrote about being off schedule and being behind the chains. And that happened a lot. And I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if it's Mississippi State or North Dakota State. If you're constantly in second and long, third and long situations, that creates difficulties for your offense. Mississippi State, by contrast, dink and dunk, super efficient, super methodical. I mean, they were 20 of 23 passing on first down, and they weren't getting a ton, but that created all sorts of, manageable second and third down situations. So I think that's something that they really need to avoid moving forward here. And I think the way to do it against North Dakota State is to be more patient with the run game. I know this is a physical team. There's no question about it. They are going to come in here and they are going to try to hit Arizona in the mouth on both sides of the ball. That's the way they play. They're kind of like if Iowa could score, they'd be North Dakota State.
Sure.
But when you look at their front seven, they don't have any 300-pounders. They lost, their best interior defensive lineman, Eli Mostert.
Watson too, right?
Their linebackers. I'm saying to injury.
Oh, to injury. Okay, you're talking about players from last year.
No. Okay. They've had plenty of guys drafted,
yeah.
High picks. Christian Watson is who you're referring to. Their best receiver was a second-round pick of the Packers. But, I mean, their linebackers are 215, 225, 215.
Yeah.
So,
OKGs?
To me, yeah, maybe. I mean, to me, like one of the issues that Arizona had the last time it played an FCS team, which was NAU, is they weren't patient enough with the run game. Like you got to stick with it. You got to hope that your big boys can wear down the other team eventually, and it takes time.
Yeah,
and if it doesn't work right away, I think Jedd Fisch really has to force himself to be stubborn with the run game. I mean, they had basically a 2-to-1 or more pass to run ratio in this last game. So essentially they were kind of playing right into Mississippi State's hands.
On the other hand, they were coming off a game though where Jayden de Laura had played so well. I think that you could almost dream that was who Jayden de Laura was going to be every week.
Yeah.
So, they were passing twice as much, probably because they were expecting the same results that Jayden de Laura had given them against San Diego State. I will say this, guys, just taking a quick step back, there's some disappointment locally that they lost a game that they were supposed to lose, but this is still, I think you'd take 1-1 through the first 2 weeks of the season, especially given the way they've played both weeks. Last Saturday wasn't an embarrassment because they were right there. I mean, down 8 with the ball and driving.
Yeah.
They moved the chains, as bad as de Laura played, they were kind of right there in the second half. I think most people, again, this is a team that Las Vegas thought would win 2.5 games this year, right? The fact that they are 1-1 and basically a pick 'em against the defending Division I AA national champions or Division I FCS, I think that's they're a little bit better than I would have guessed at this point through 2 weeks, and that's a step in the right direction.
How will fans feel if they lose this game, no matter what the score is?
I think that your local average fan is going to be horrified if they lose.
The sky is falling.
I would say this to your average fan. To compare North Dakota State to Alabama is to insult North Dakota State. They are the Alabama and then some of their little world, right? They get all the best players. They win a bunch of national championships. They take football incredibly seriously. This is not NAU coming down from Flagstaff.
I was going to say, so what is NAU's comparison?
This team would light up NAU. And I think that that's worth keeping in the back of your head because I don't think Arizona is going to boat race these guys by any stretch.
No.
I think this is Arizona either wins close or loses. And, to kind of, a fan who might sit there and go, Division I FCS, Arizona should beat them every time. This is a little bit of a different deal. This is the Alabama of FCS, and it's worth keeping in the back of your mind when you watch this game on Saturday night.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say too, because we all remember that game last year when they lost to NAU. If Arizona somehow loses to North Dakota State, and it's a respectable loss, like a 28-24 game, I would be totally fine with that, because I remember that feeling when they lost to NAU, and I was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. I know that.
And how they lost to NAU.
Well, NAU was down to the third-string quarterback who was a true freshman. Arizona was up 13-0 originally in that game. And like you thought, man, I know that Kevin Sumlin didn't really leave anything for Jed Fish. He left the kitchen pretty empty. Right. But you still have to beat NAU, right?
This is a different deal.
Yeah.
These guys are, I think, a much bigger, more imposing team. I mean, again, we were talking off mic before we started. How many Pac-12 teams could they beat on Saturday? 6?
Oh, for sure. That I take them
7. I mean, they're not going to beat USC. They're not going to beat Oregon. They're not going to beat probably even Washington.
But Colorado.
Everybody else is fair game.
Yeah.
And so
who did Washington lose to last year at home? Was it Montana?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know.
Anything is possible. Who did Notre Dame lose to at home this past week?
Marshall.
Yeah.
Who did Texas A&M lose at home to this past week? App State. Who did Nebraska lose at home to this past week?
Everybody.
I mean, Georgia Southern.
The Fighting Clay Heltons.
Yeah, so
Michael Lev never hesitates to remind us of a Northwestern win. Anyway,
you need to be on guard, and I think that fans have to be realistic about how difficult this game is and where Arizona is in its rebuilding project.
By the way, I love the fact. My favorite part about the press conferences this week was Lev talking to the coordinators. And he said, so he asked them something along the lines of getting ready for this game. And they kind of like shrugged it off like, every week is kind of a championship week. Very coach speak, right? And Lev was like, okay, that's cool. But like try convincing 18 to 20-year-olds that they're playing against an FCS team. Because they look at North Dakota State like, okay, we should easily beat these guys. But I don't think that that's going to be the case because Arizona lost to NAU. This is a week after all of these upsets. I think if these guys are smart, they're going to be on alert that they can be beat by the Bison.
Well, and they need to be self-aware a little bit. And, self-awareness is not something a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds have. But they need to understand that
2 and 24 or 27, 25, whatever it is.
I would just say even this year, games where you can realistically go in and win. How many of those will Arizona have this season? 6, 8, maybe? I mean, this is a chance to, put a notch in the belt, so to speak, and to get your second win. It doesn't matter who it's against. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a physical, tough, exciting game. And, it'll, just buckle up. I think it's going to be exciting.
They've got such a weird statistical profile, North Dakota State, coming into this game, having played Drake and North Carolina A&T, which I don't think are very good opponents. I mean, they've outscored them 99-17. They have 35 points off turnovers. Their opponents have none. Their leading receiver, Justin, has 3 receptions in 2 games. Their leading ball carrier has 9 rushing attempts, but they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys who have 6 or more rushing attempts.
It's like 2A football.
Like what is going on? They don't have they haven't made a field goal. They're 0 for 2. And I think they've scored maybe 4 non-offensive touchdowns or so in the first 2 games. So the biggest thing I can say before we segue into our next our over-unders or whatever we're going to do here is if Arizona can avoid hurting itself in this game, if they can avoid self-inflicted wounds, I think they have a very good chance. The turnaround that happened in that NAU game was the pick 6 at the end of the first half. If you throw the ball out of bounds, go into the locker room with 13-0, they're probably going to win that game.
Yeah.
That changed everything. If they can avoid those plays, and a lot of that falls onto Jaden DeLora, I think they have a good chance.
All right, now let's move into over-unders for Arizona, North Dakota State. How about fans from Fargo or fans who will be representing the Bison at Arizona Stadium? I spoke to Jeff Kolpak. He's a North Dakota State beat writer, and he said that they're expecting right around 10,000 fans. So I'm going to put it at 10,000 right on the nose. Over, under.
I say over.
Over, huh?
I think North Dakota State is very amped about this. I think they'll travel well. I'm sure that some people who live up there have homes down here, as
Snowbirds.
Northerners do. And I think they're going to represent in a major way at this game, which makes for a good atmosphere at the stadium.
Absolutely. I wish there was 10,000 visiting fans at every Arizona home game. I think that's makes for sort of a fun thing, right?
Yeah.
All these people. I mean, you guys were telling me last weekend about the good experiences you had with Mississippi State people.
They were great.
Yeah. And, so yeah, I'll take the over. I would like to see, 10,000 North Dakota State fans. Now, how many total fans will there be in this? That's probably the next one. But
That
go ahead,
is.
Justin.
That is. I'm taking the over. Now, Mississippi State, they actually brought their live mascot, Jack. I don't think North Dakota State's bringing a live bison to Arizona Stadium.
Was that the highlight of your week?
Easily, hands down.
Did you guys get down in the grass? Did you rub his tummy?
Yeah,
Oh.
he ran up to me and kind of body checked my leg and was the sweetest dog ever. And his handler was the nicest lady ever.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, Mississippi State fans, they barked like dogs all weekend, but man, they were the nicest people ever. It was kind of like reverse Southern hospitality.
Yeah,
you
makes sense. Sure.
All right, so now let's do attendance at Arizona Stadium. So 46,000, that's the most since the Washington game in 2019. So I'm going to put it at 45,000 for Saturday night. Are we going to go over or under?
I'm going to take the under on that one. You don't have the excitement of the first week. You don't have the SEC opponent, even though I think, as we mentioned, North Dakota State's going to represent well. That's a high bar for this team at this particular point. So if they can get into the 40s at all, I think it'll be considered a success. I think 45 is a little high.
I say this as somebody with kids. A second consecutive 8 p.m. kickoff probably does not bode well. I can't imagine a whole lot of fans going to both games, going to 2 games in 8 days, both of which start at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. So I'll take the under as well. I think it's going to be a really compelling game. This is no knock on the matchup at all. In fact, I kind of like it as opposed to them playing UNLV or New Mexico or whoever else would come through here. But I think that asking somebody to go to back-to-back 8 p.m. kickoffs is probably a little bit of a tough ask.
I'm going to go with the under, but in terms of fans who are at Arizona Stadium with 5 minutes left in the game, because Mississippi State kind of got away there for a little bit in the fourth quarter and it blew up to a 22-point lead. I think this is going to be a closer game that kind of goes all the way down to the last couple of minutes. So with that being said, I think that there are going to be less fans than what we saw a week ago at the start, but I think with the last couple of minutes, it's going to be more packed. All right, how about Jamari Joyner plays at quarterback? So we saw him installed at quarterback, Wildcat quarterback, in 2 plays. So with that being said, I'm going to put the over-under at 1.5. I was very skeptical about, I believe it was the second time they put Jamari Joyner in at quarterback because Jaden DeLora had 9 straight incompletions and then was 5 for 6 and then was kind of getting into a rhythm. And then they were like, okay, we're going to throw in Jamari Joyner, and it just completely offset their entire rhythm. So I think they're going to put Jamari Joyner at quarterback, but I'm only going to go with 1 play. They're going to give it a shot, maybe in the red zone or something like that. So 1.5, I'm going with the under at 1.
Dang, that's tough. 1.5 is tough. I think Jed obviously thinks it's a good idea, that it's a useful change up, and he thought if that first play was blocked better, that it might have been a touchdown. But it's also not a secret anymore.
It's got to be timely though.
And I think that he wants his regular quarterback to succeed. And I don't think taking him off the field is a way to do that. All that being said, that number's so low, definitely is the possibility of 2 or 3 of those plays. So I'm just going to reluctantly take the over on that one.
I'm going to take the under. I think that another quarterback should come in certain packages, but I don't think it should be Jamari Joyner.
Ooh.
I was so impressed with Noah Fafita. I mean, let me give you my 15 seconds.
Are you starting quarterback controversy?
I'll tell you who else was. The 2 guys calling that football game on TV. They were both like, well, we're not saying it's a quarterback controversy, but he was doing everything DeLora could not do. I thought he was spectacular. Really. And, hey, man, you're at the end. You're getting killed. You're playing somebody else's 2s and 3s. I know that that's not a real life. Those stats aren't real. But he looked really good to me. And I would not be surprised to, especially if Delora struggles, wouldn't be surprised if they gave Fafita just a little taste again to see if he can get their offense going. Because that offense looked a lot better and moved a lot easier with Fafita at quarterback.
And with that being mentioned, how about receiving touchdowns for Arizona? So if Jaden Delora is struggling a little bit, maybe they don't have as many receiving touchdowns as one would expect. So I'm putting the over-under. I'm setting it at 2.5 receiving touchdowns for the Wildcats. Lev, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under on that one. I think 2 is a good number. It could be 1 if they do stick with the run game, which I think would be a good game plan. I have a final score in mind already, and I don't have them scoring a crazy amount of touchdowns, so I'm going to take the under on that one.
Yeah, I think Arizona's path to victory is running the football. And, that's going to be how they score. So I'll take the under. I'll say 2 receiving touchdowns make some sense. Okay. Maybe Cowing gets 1, T-Mac gets 1, something like that. Can we dream that maybe a tight end might touch the ball in the end zone?
Ooh.
Would that be fun, especially if they're running the ball a lot? But, yeah, no, 2.5 to me seems high.
I'm ready to get crazy in this game. Little Pac-12 After Dark special against North Dakota State. That one play that Jamari Joyner's in, they're going to put him in the red zone. It's going to be like inside the 10-yard line, and he's going to do a jump pass, Tim Tebow style, to a tight end, and that's the third touchdown of the game.
Your head would explode.
Jaden Delora, 2 touchdowns, Jamari Joyner with another. All right, how about times the loss to NAU is mentioned on the FS1 broadcast? 1.5.
I'll take the over.
Over.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah,
It'll be mentioned in the intro. It'll be mentioned anytime Arizona gets down. It'll be mentioned anytime Arizona gets up. Oh, yeah. No, I think the over-under is like 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take the over on that one. They'll have their talking points, and sometimes when there's lulls in the game or depending on how the flow of the game's going, you have to go back to those talking points. So I'm with Ryan on that one.
I'll take the over as well. All right, now let's go into Pac-12 pick'ems. Another great week ahead. A lot of interesting matchups. We are going to pick the Arizona-North Dakota State game at the end. We'll give our score predictions and also predict the over-under on that as well. So let's start off with
season records.
Oh, season records.
Why do you? Okay.
Why do I keep bringing it up?
Why do you bring this up?
Because I want to be accountable.
Sure.
I don't want to hide from the reality of my 3-7 record against the spread so far in last place and not even close. 6-4 straight up, which is okay, not great. What do you got, Justin?
So you're what, 6-4,
3-7,
3-7 against the spread?
Yes, sir.
I am 8-2 against the spread. Is that correct?
It is.
And then am I 9-1 straight up?
I think that's possible.
That's
yes.
insane.
Yeah. Ryan, I didn't get your total calculation.
I'm 5-5, 6-4.
So you're very Jeff Fisher.
Very Jeff Fisher. Very Jeff Fisher. I'm hanging on for dear life here. We're all looking up at you in the standings here. So
6-4 is a good solid record against the spread. If you get 60%, you're doing well.
You're
Justin, I don't know what.
Money. Yeah.
I feel like I should just whatever Justin says today, I should just do the same, right. unless we're headed towards some regression here, which I'm kind of banking on.
Right. If I can pat myself on the back just a little, I believe that I've referred to 2 games as locks in the last 2 weeks, and I've won them both. So that's
okay.
That's something.
Yeah.
That's something.
Was Oregon State one of your
Oregon
locks?
State was last
Oh,
week.
yes. It was in the bag the whole
time,
way.
The whole time.
Uh-huh.
I look so smart.
Yeah.
So smart.
All right, well, let's go into the games here. First up, we got Cal versus Notre Dame. And the Fighting Irish are 10.5-point favorites.
Cal is Arizona's opponent next week. And they are stepping into a difficult situation, I think. I mean, Notre Dame's obviously embarrassed and kind of reeling from losing to Marshall at home last week. They lost their quarterback. Mm-hmm. So that situation's kind of up in the air. It's 10.5 points, which feels like a lot. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. I think Notre Dame has to win this game, right? Like, they can't start 0-3.
Right.
They're at home. Cal barely beat UNLV last week. Against my better judgment, I'm also going to take Notre Dame to cover in that one because it just sort of makes sense.
You're from the Midwest, Chicago specifically.
Yes.
Growing up, were you a Notre Dame person?
I hated Notre Dame.
Okay.
I was a DePaul basketball fan.
Okay.
And so they were kind of like the big basketball rival.
Okay.
And when Northwestern beat Notre Dame way back in the day in the 90s, that was one of the greatest days of my life. So
when I think of DePaul, I don't think of DePaul basketball. I think of Arizona, Illinois. 05, 08.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. DePaul basketball plays in a very, very, very new, very, very nice arena. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Looking at this, if you're asking who I think is going to win, I think Notre Dame has to win here, in part because I'm not sure South Bend would still be standing on Monday if they lost. They may burn the whole thing down. That said, the way Cal plays, I can't see Cal allowing more than like 20 points. And if that's the case, all we're asking Cal to do is to score 10 to cover. So I'll take the Golden Bears to cover, but Notre Dame to win.
Yeah, I think this is the ultimate get-right game for Notre Dame and their new head coach, Marcus Freeman. So I'm going to take Notre Dame to win and to cover. I think they blast the Golden Bears by a couple touchdowns. All right, Oregon against BYU. This is my favorite matchup of the week. And the Ducks are 4-point favorites against the Cougars. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, are you buying Dan Lanning against BYU, or do you like Kalani Sitake and his Cougars to win?
I kind of am buying Dan Lanning. I know they got absolutely destroyed by Georgia in week 1, but Georgia might be a semi-pro team.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia would destroy a lot of teams.
They are just loaded. They lost a ton of guys to the NFL draft, and they're still incredibly talented. I mean, Kirby Smart's just been killing it on the recruiting front there. They bounced back last week. They put up 70 against Eastern Washington. I know it's Eastern Washington, but a pretty good FCS team. I think that's an encouraging score for them. BYU played a late and very difficult and very physical game against Baylor last week, a game that they ended up winning.
Right. Storm the field, whole 9 yards. Yeah.
And meanwhile, while all that was going on, Oregon was just resting and watching it on TV. Mm-hmm. And I think this is kind of an important game to kind of launch the Dan Lanning era.
Yeah.
They're at home, and I think there's just no way BYU is going to go through this gauntlet of a schedule of theirs unscathed. I think they're definitely a top 25 team, but I'm going to take Oregon, and I'm going to take Oregon to cover as well.
Same. For all the reasons you just said, BYU is coming off an emotionally draining game. It is a long season for them. I like the Ducks. I mean, it's hard to pick against the Ducks at home, isn't it? I mean, if we're just sort of simplifying this, they don't lose at home, and they don't lose badly at home, hardly ever. So I will take the Ducks against BYU.
Like you said, Lev, I know it's Eastern Washington, but Bo Nix was 28 for 33, 277 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, just 5 incompletions. And again, I know it's FCS opponent. If North Dakota State's Alabama, Eastern Washington's probably Wazoo, right? But again, the fact that they can put up those kind of numbers is very impressive. I think being a home game, they're going to have that Eugene crowd behind them, and it's going to get rowdy, and it's going to be in favor for the Oregon. So I'm going to go with the Ducks to win by a touchdown. All right, now let's go into the next game, Michigan State at UW. Mel Tucker and his guys are coming to Seattle, and they are 3.5-point favorites. What do you think is going to happen?
Wait, who is?
Michigan State.
I thought Washington was the favorite.
Are they the favorite? I looked at Caesars and it said.
Do I have this wrong? No, Washington is the favorite.
Washington is the favorite? Ooh.
Yeah. No, Washington is the favorite in this one.
Okay.
Yeah, a little home field 3 points. It's 3.5 is what you've got, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So Washington is giving. Mm-hmm. Okay. Again,
I'm going with Sparty.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your logic there?
I don't know.
Sparty to win and cover?
Well, I mean,
if they win, they cover.
They're the dogs.
Right.
I don't know, man. I think that Washington is still kind of in rebuild mode. This isn't the Washington team that we've seen over the last several years. Now, I think they can get to that point, but I don't think they're there just yet. And one thing about Michigan State and Mel Tucker is that they win those tough games. So I'm going to go with Mel Tucker and Sparty to win.
I'm going to stay loyal to the Pac-12 brand here and pick Washington. Again, I feel like this is an important game early in Kalen DeBoer's tenure. I think he's a good coach. I think we've seen just how improved that team is, especially on offense. And defense was not the problem before, but they couldn't move the ball at all last year. I mean, they almost lost to Arizona when Arizona was, kind of in the depths. And things are different now. Michael Penix is playing at a high level. I think it's going to be a great home field advantage situation. I think there's going to be a lot of false starts and operational issues for the Sparties. So I'm going to take the favorite here. I'm going to take the Huskies to win and cover.
This is where you might come back in the standings, Lev, because looking at Michigan State's schedule, they have Minnesota the next week. So does Sparty, being ranked, 11th in the country right now, do them having a game against Minnesota the following week, are they going to be overlooking Washington? I don't know. I'm starting to worry because I think Lev and I are agreeing on way too much. And I know Lev's track record. This is my same logic as I had with Oregon, which is, Washington playing at home on a national stage. It's going to be loud. It's going to be fun. And Michigan State has to travel a long, long way to play this football game. I know maybe that's oversimplification here, but I don't think Washington loses at home. Not this Washington team. Not a team with a veteran quarterback in Michael Penix Jr., really good defense, and a coach who knows what he's doing. So give me the Huskies. All right, let's move over to the next game. Everyone's favorite California matchup, USC versus Fresno State. Trojans are 12.5-point favorites in this game. Every time I think of this game,
Reggie Bush.
Reggie Bush, the fall game, him just going Bo Jackson, Tecmo Bowl on the Bulldogs. With that being said, I don't think that Travis Dye is going to be putting up a similar performance to Reggie Bush, but I think Caleb Williams will probably drop around 4 or 5 touchdowns. So I'm going to go with the Trojans big at home.
So I called that, someone was tweeting out some highlights of that game. I called it the greatest performance by the greatest college football player that I have ever seen.
Yes.
You're
Reggie absolutely right. Yes.
Utterly ridiculous in that game. He had over 500 total yards if you include kick returns. I think everyone remembers that cutback play where, he just stopped on a dime and ran all the way across the field and outraced everybody. But you know what the score of that game was? It was 50-42.
No kidding.
So everyone feels like, yeah. So look, this USC offense is awesome. Okay. It is the best offense in the league. There's no question about it. That defense isn't that good. They've been fortunate the first 2 weeks. They've had a bunch of takeaways. Stanford fumbled inside the 5-yard line 2 times. Stanford was moving the ball up and down the field. They almost came back and backdoor covered. I'm going to take USC to win. I'm going to take Fresno to cover. The line is suspiciously small. Why is it only 12.5 if USC is so great? Top 10 team at home against a group of 5 team. Vegas knows something. USC to win, Fresno to cover.
I like SC to win and to cover. Fresno State had its chance last week to beat a Pac-12 team and didn't. They lose in heartbreaking form. If you have not watched the final play of the Oregon State-Fresno game, look it up. It's spectacular. To me, they had their chance. They blew it, and now they are going to get rolled by a very talented USC team. Give me the Trojans to win and cover.
I still ask, have we ever seen Jack Coletto and Taysom Hill in the same room
Great
at
point.
the same time?
Great point. How about, I could talk to you. I love the way this game ended. They knew exactly where the ball was going and who was getting it, and Jack Coletto just, rolled him and scored and won the game. Crazy finish.
All right, now one last game before the Arizona-North Dakota State game. Arizona State versus Eastern Michigan. And the Sun Devils are 20.5-point favorites. And ASU, as we talked about earlier, coming off their loss to Oklahoma State. The Cowboys kind of pulled away there in the fourth quarter, scoring a couple of touchdowns. With that being said, we expected Arizona State to lose that game. So I'm going to go with ASU to come back home and beat Eastern Michigan. I'm going to go with Emory Jones to have 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, and ASU gets their second win of the season. But I do think Eastern Michigan will hit like a backdoor cover. So I got ASU by 17.
I feel the same way. I think this ASU team just has some flaws. If they get behind, I think they're in trouble in any given game. I don't think that'll happen in this particular contest. Eastern Michigan is kind of a middling MAC team. They got blown out against Wisconsin earlier this season. And I'm sorry. You know what? That's last year's schedule. No, check that.
Flag.
Flag
on Michael Lev.
Yeah, no. I'm looking at 2021.
Premature analysis.
All right, Eastern Michigan is 1-1. They beat Eastern Kentucky 42-34 narrowly, and then they got blown out at Louisiana Lafayette. I still call them Louisiana Lafayette,
yes,
even though they call themselves Louisiana, which seems like an insult to Louisiana Monroe. But 20.5 feels like a lot for a team that I just don't think is that explosive offensively, aside from a couple guys, kind of a run-oriented team. So I can totally see the final score of this game being, ASU 37, Eastern Michigan 20, something along those lines, in which case EMU would cover.
EMU.
Fun fact about Louisiana Lafayette, Michael Lev. They're not legally allowed to call themselves the University of Louisiana. And so what they do to get around that is they call themselves Louisiana's Raging Cajuns. Do you know that?
Wow, I thought they just went by Lafayette.
No.
Louisiana.
They have tried to brand themselves as the University of Louisiana. Yeah. And people in the legislature in Louisiana is like, yeah, you can't do that. So they call themselves Louisiana's Raging Cajuns. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I watched a lot of Maction last year because I was bored a lot on Wednesdays. Eastern Michigan's legit. I mean, this is a program that is not going to get manhandled, I don't think. I like ASU to win, but I do like Eastern Michigan to cover.
All right, now let's move ahead to Saturday night, Arizona Stadium. Wildcats versus North Dakota State. This is a FBS versus FCS, so they're kind of slow with the lines here. But we do have one spread for the game, right? One line. It's 1 point for North Dakota State.
North Dakota State favored by 1. Over under of 54.5. This is from WinBet, WYNN.
Like Steve Wynn.
There will be official lines posted. I think it happens on the day of, right?
Yeah.
So Saturday morning, the official line will come out, but Arizona is a slight underdog in this game, which should give you some idea of how good North Dakota State is. Well, while we've been doing the podcast, which is probably why I messed up the EMU schedule there, I've been kind of glancing at some highlights of the Bison from their game against North Carolina A&T last week. They block really well and in unison. They've got just a very specific kind of identity on offense. And I'm sure Petros Papadakis, the FS1 analyst, will talk about that a lot. He's big on offensive identity. They don't have names on the back of their jerseys.
Because they play for the front.
Yeah, it's very team oriented. They've got these kind of cool green and yellow, kind of Green Bay Packers-ish color scheme. So key points that I mentioned earlier. I stick with the run. Try to wear down somewhat undersized North Dakota State front. Don't hurt yourself. Keep killer mistakes to a minimum, and better quarterback decision making. Jaden, if you've got a few yards ahead of you, it's okay. You can run, you can slide, you can keep the team on schedule. I think that it's going to be a grinded out kind of game. I think that Arizona is capable of winning that kind of game. I think they have an edge with their kicker, and he's going to kick 4 field goals. Tyler Loop is in this one, and Arizona is going to win 26-20.
Ooh, there we go.
So I've got the Wildcats and I've got the under.
I think that one of the things that gives me pause with this game is just Arizona's inconsistency so far this season. We don't know who's going to come out of the gate on Saturday, right? Is it going to be the Wildcats who beat the heck out of San Diego State in week one, or is it going to be the team that really struggled, turned the ball over a bunch against Mississippi State? Given a chance to pick between a team that's inconsistent and a team that is wildly consistent, I will take the consistent team here, and that's North Dakota State. I think it's going to be close. Like Lev said, I think it's going to be a very physical game, very run-oriented. I like the Bison to come in here and win 30-28. They win and cover just barely. Again, I think your average fan is going to look at it as a really bad loss if Arizona loses. Don't do that. This is a North Dakota State team that is chomping at the bit to get a win over Power 5 conference team, and I think has the talent and the discipline to do it.
Can I be a snobby college football fan here for a second?
Yes.
It's Bison. You said Bison.
Bison. No,
yeah,
Bison.
It's Bison.
Bison.
Yeah, it's with a Z.
Bison, the Z.
It's just it's like the opposite of Boise and Boise. I mean, I remember the only time I've been to Boise was for the NCAA tournament, and I said Boise, and the lady kind of got offended and was like, "It's actually Boise."
BOY, comma SI.
Boise. Was her name Karen?
I didn't ask, but yeah.
Can I just call them the Buffaloes? Is that better?
Bison.
Yeah, well, I'll just call them Buffaloes.
This is a very great opponent for Arizona. I mean, when they announced that this would be on the schedule in the year 2022, even when it was announced, we were like, whoa, North Dakota State, they're actually a pretty good team. Justin
Spears was on his lunch break at Cienega High School when this game was announced 8 years ago. And he went, in 2022, we got a game.
Since 2011, the Bison have a record of 149-12.
Yeah.
You look at since being in the FCS, every time they get to the playoffs, they are 41-3. So they're a great postseason team. They win championships. They have a great culture. You look at players in the NFL between both programs, and it's kind of a reflection of the culture. Sure. North Dakota State has more guys in the league. Arizona doesn't.
Wait. Really?
North Dakota State has more players in the NFL than Arizona.
Well, I guess they have two starting quarterbacks, don't they?
Yeah.
Carson Wentz and Trey Lance?
And Trey Lance. And a backup with the Chargers.
Easton Stick.
Wow.
They have more quarterbacks currently in the NFL than Arizona has ever had in the NFL.
Yes.
Okay.
So with that being said, they have a great culture, but we're just talking about Saturday night. Arizona versus North Dakota State. Their best versus Arizona's best. I think the Wildcats, they're going to have no issues getting up for this game. One of the over-unders that I actually forgot to put in this game, I think should be takeaways. Mm-hmm. And they have the turnover sword that's been very popular. A lot of equipment managers nationwide are upset at Arizona for this trend.
Yeah, it hasn't been popular in Starkville, Mississippi, I don't think.
No. But with that being said, I think Arizona gets a couple of takeaways. Now, I don't think they're going to get interceptions. I think that this is a game since North Dakota State is going to run the ball. Mm-hmm. I think that this is an opportunity where we're going to see a lot of punching and maybe some fumbles. Arizona has done a great job forcing fumbles and recovering them. So I think Arizona will have a couple of takeaways in this game. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Arizona to win in a close game, 34-28. So give me the over on that one. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Arizona versus North Dakota State, 8 p.m. kickoff at Arizona Stadium. Make sure you check out our content on Tucson.com, subscribe to us online, and find our work for free on the Wildcaster app, which you can download off the App Store and Google Play. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.